Have you ever caught yourself saying something like, Congress needs to get it together. They need to fix this. Why don't they just do their jobs? I have a lot. And it feels right, doesn't it? They're the ones in charge. They're the ones making decisions. So they should be the ones fixing it. But here's the question I had to wrestle with. And I don't love the answer. If what we've been doing for years, complaining, reacting, picking sides, waiting for them to change things, if that was actually working, would we still be this frustrated? Because if we're honest, we've been doing the same things over and over again for a few decades now and expecting a different result. I mean, I've done that in my own life. It never works out great. So today I want to try something different. Not another explanation of what Congress is doing wrong. Not another breakdown of the system, but something much more uncomfortable. What if the starting point for change isn't Congress? What if it's us? And I know that sounds like blame. That's not what this is. This is about understanding something really important. Congress doesn't operate in a vacuum. It responds to incentives, pressure, attention, behavior, and a lot of that comes from us. So if we want Congress to change, we have to understand what actually drives change in the first place. And more importantly, what we can do differently that actually works. Because there are things we can do. Clear, specific, repeatable things. Not loud, not flashy, but effective. And that's what we're going to walk through today. This is American Together, which means we're not just reacting. We're going to pause, pinpoint truth, and then proceed with purposeful forethought. It's easier to point at them. I do that too. But it's much harder to look at what we're contributing to the system. Truth check.
From anyone, we stand American together.
So before we get into what to do, we need to understand why what we've been doing hasn't worked. Because that feeling that nothing works, that's not random. Let's start with something really honest. When most of us say we want Congress to change, we're usually picturing something pretty big. We picture elections, we picture sweeping reforms, we picture finally getting the right people in. And listen, those things matter. They absolutely do. But here's the question I had to start asking myself. If that's how change happens, why haven't things changed much? Because we've been doing that for decades. Voting, arguing, posting, waiting for the next election cycle. And I'm not saying those things are wrong. I'm asking a different question. Are they working the way we think they are? Because if the only time we think we have influence is during an election, then what happens the other 1,300 plus days in between? That's where most of us step back. We watch, we react, we get frustrated, but we don't really see a clear way to do anything that feels like it matters. So we default to what's visible. Big moments, big reactions, big swings, and quietly, without realizing it, we start to believe that if we're not doing something big, we're not doing anything at all. So before we jump into what to do, we need to shift where we're looking. Because if we keep aiming all our energy at the same visible moments, we're going to keep getting the same results. And that's where we're going next. Because what we're doing right now matters more than we think. So let's pause for a second and look at what we're actually doing. Because most of us say we want Congress to change. We want less gridlock, less drama, more cooperation, more results. But if we're honest, the way we respond to Congress right now isn't actually pushing things in that direction. Think about what gets the most attention. It's not the quiet moments where people work things out. It's not the long meetings where compromise happens. It's the arguments, the clips, the gotcha moments, the frustration. That's what spreads. That's what we react to. That's what we share. That's what we talk about. And I get it, because those moments are easier to understand. They're faster, they're clearer, they give us someone to blame. And honestly, they feel a little satisfying sometimes. And by sometimes, I mean, yeah. But here's the problem. When those are the moments we focus on, that's what gets rewarded. And what gets rewarded gets repeated. So even though we say we want cooperation, we're giving the most attention to conflict. We're not doing that on purpose, but it still shapes what happens next. And this is where things start to shift, because patterns have consequences. And if the pattern stays the same, we shouldn't expect the outcome to change. That's not a Congress problem. That's a feedback loop. What we react to, what we share, what we pay attention to feeds right back into the system. And that system responds, whether we realize it or not. So now that we've stepped back and seen the pattern, I want to connect something really important, because this is the piece that changes everything. We just said this is a feedback loop, that what gets attention gets repeated, and that the system responds. And here's the question we don't usually ask. What is the system actually responding to? Because it's not just reacting to opinions, it's reacting to signals. Signals are patterns. Not one moment, not one post, not one frustrated reaction. What people consistently pay attention to, what people consistently support, what people consistently push back on. And just as important, what people consistently ignore. That's what shapes behavior. Because if you're in a position of leadership, you're constantly asking, what matters to people? What will they notice? What will they react to? What can I do that won't cost me support? And the answers to those questions don't come from one loud moment. They come from patterns. Patterns are what tell leaders what is safe, what is risky, and what is worth acting on. And here's where this starts to shift. Because when we only show up in big emotional bursts, we feel loud. But to the system, that's not a strong signal. It's inconsistent, and it's easy to wait out. But when something shows up clearly, repeatedly, and across more than one person, that's different. That becomes harder to ignore, not because it's louder, but because it's consistent. We tend to think impact comes from one big moment, but most of the time, impact comes from smaller actions that show up often enough to form a pattern. Hard to admit, right? Me too. Truth check. So if the system responds to signals, and signals are built from patterns, then the question isn't, how do I make Congress change? It becomes, how do I become part of a signal that's hard to ignore? Because that's where influence actually starts. And once you see that, the next question becomes, what does that actually look like in real life? So if all of this is true, if Congress responds to incentives, if attention, pressure, and persistence shape behavior, then the question becomes, what can we actually do that works? Because I don't want to leave you with frustration. I want to leave you with something you can actually use. Here's the key. Congress doesn't respond to one loud moment. They respond to patterns. Not one loud moment, but repeated, consistent signals. So instead of one big action, we're going to look at this in tiers. Let's start with tier 1. Low effort, but it still matters. These are simple, but they're not meaningless. Call your representative, not just email, call. Use your own words, not a copied script that everyone is using. And be consistent, not just once, but enough that it starts to show up as a pattern. Here's why that matters. Staffers track patterns, not just what people say, but how often they hear it and whether it keeps showing up. One call, easy to dismiss. But when similar messages come in again and again and again, that becomes a signal. And signals shape priorities because repetition signals priority, and priority influences what gets attention inside the office. Now let's move to tier 2. A little more effort, but more impact. Now we build on that. Follow up. Show up to town halls or local events. And instead of just making statements, ask questions. Here's why that matters. Questions do something powerful. They force an answer. They create accountability, especially when asked in public. And when you show up more than once, you stop being a one-time voice and start becoming a known presence. That changes how seriously you're taken because public questions create visibility, and visibility creates pressure. And this is tier 3, where influence really starts to build. Bring a small group, show up repeatedly, and connect issues to real people. Here's why that matters. Elected officials think in terms of groups, not just individuals. A group represents votes. Votes represent outcomes. And when real stories are attached to an issue, it's no longer abstract. It becomes something they have to consider in a much more human way. Because groups signal votes, and votes are the strongest incentives in the system. Now let me show you what this looks like in real life, because I don't just want to tell you what to do, I want to show you how I would do it. Let's say there's something I care about strongly. And this is just one example. You would plug in whatever issue matters to you. I believe members of Congress should be required to have conflict resolution training. Yes, I said required, because right now, what we're seeing isn't disagreement. It's escalation, it's talking past each other, it's reacting instead of listening. And that doesn't just affect Congress, it shapes how the entire country interacts. You might completely disagree with me on that, and that's okay. That's not the point here. The point is, if I believe something matters, how do I actually move it forward? So if this is something I care about, here's what that could look like in real life. And I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm just showing you how this works. Let's start with tier 1. Low effort, but it still matters. First, I figure out who actually represents me, not Congress as a whole, specific people. I would literally Google who is my House representative. That tells me my district and the person who represents me. Then I go to their official website. Every member of Congress has one. And on that site, there's usually a section like contact or services. That's where I find phone numbers, office locations, and sometimes a contact form. So when I say I call, this is what I mean. I call that number, a staffer answers, not the representative, and I say in my own words, "Hi, I live in your district, and I'd like to share a concern about something I think Congress should consider." And then I say it briefly. I believe members of Congress should have conflict resolution training because what we're seeing right now is escalation instead of problem solving. That's it. Not a speech, just clear and respectful. Here's why that matters. Staffers log what they hear, not just what's said, but how often it shows up. One call, easy to ignore. Repeated calls on the same issue, that becomes a pattern. Now let's move to tier 2, a little more effort, but more impact. Now, if I want to go one step further, I look for a town hall. Again, this isn't complicated. I would Google my representative town hall or check their website or social media. That's usually where those events are posted. And if I go in understanding how it works. You don't just walk in and start talking. Sometimes you submit a question ahead of time. Sometimes there's a microphone, sometimes questions are selected. So I may or may not get called on, and that's okay, because this isn't about one moment. It's about showing up consistently. And if I do get the chance to ask a question, I keep it simple and direct. Would you support requiring conflict resolution training for members of Congress? And why or why not? Here's why that matters. Now you're not just a message. You're a person. Presence matters. When representatives see the same concern showing up in calls and in rooms, it carries more weight. And this is tier 3, where influence really starts to build. Now, I don't go alone. I bring a few other people who see the same problem. And I want to be really honest here. I've called, I've emailed, I've observed a town hall, but I've never done this part intentionally like this, as a coordinated group. And that's exactly why I'm showing you, because this is where small actions start to connect and turn into something bigger. And this doesn't take a huge group. Even 3 to 5 people coordinating can start to create a pattern. So here's what that actually looks like in practice. We agree on one clear issue, not 5 different concerns. One. For me, that might sound like this. I believe members of Congress should be required to have conflict resolution training. That's the shared issue. Now, each person doesn't repeat it word for word, but we stay clearly connected to it. So one person might say, right now, what we're seeing isn't disagreement, it's escalation. I'd like to see conflict resolution training required for members of Congress. Another person might say, when communication breaks down in Congress, nothing moves forward. What would it look like to require conflict resolution training so that doesn't keep happening? And someone else might say, this isn't just about Congress. It shapes how the country interacts. Have you considered requiring conflict resolution training for members? Same issue, different angles, clearly connected. And we keep the language similar enough that it's recognizable as the same concern. Then we show up together and we make that connection visible. That can be as simple as saying, I'm here with a few others who share this concern. Or even something small and practical, like wearing a simple badge or using the same color. And it's clear we came as a group, not to be loud, not to disrupt, just to be recognizable. And we don't rely on one moment. If one of us gets called on, we ask the question. If another person gets the chance, they raise the same issue from a slightly different angle. And if some of us don't get to speak, that's okay, because this isn't about one perfect moment. It's about the pattern. And we reinforce that pattern across more than one place. Some of us call, some of us follow up after the event, and we do it within a short window, ideally within 2 to 5 days. Close enough that it clearly looks connected, not random. Now, something changes. This isn't just one person reaching out. This is the same concern, showing up multiple times from people who are clearly connected, because now it doesn't look like one person's opinion. It looks like something that could matter to more voters. Here's why that works. Staffers don't just log individual messages, they flag patterns. And when the same issue shows up from multiple people within a short window, that gets elevated because it signals coordinated voter concern. And shared signals are what get attention because they represent voters, and votes are the strongest incentive in the system. So now this isn't just an idea. Now it's coordinated. Now it's visible. Now it's repeated. And that's what turns it from a signal into something they have to respond to. We tend to think change happens in big dramatic moments, but most real change, it builds quietly through repeated intentional action. That's not weak, that's strategic. That's how systems actually move. Truth check. So if you've ever felt like nothing I do matters, I get that. And when everything feels that big, It's easy to believe our small actions don't matter, but this is the part we don't usually stop to think about. So here's what all of this adds up to, because this is where everything we just talked about comes together. Change doesn't happen because we say something once. It happens because patterns become impossible to ignore. And this is the part that shifted how I think about all of this. Change doesn't happen because people are told to change. Change happens when the incentives change. And incentives aren't just something that exists in Congress. They exist in every human interaction, which means whether we realize it or not, we're part of the environment Congress responds to. When we react instantly, when we reward outrage because it feels good in the moment, we're strengthening the exact patterns we say we want to change. But when we slow down, when we stay in the conversation just a little longer, when we choose clarity over reaction, we start shifting those incentives, not all at once, but consistently. Because consistency is what gets noticed in conversations, in communities, and in what gets attention. They don't just shape culture, they shape what leaders respond to. Change doesn't respond to what we say once. It responds to what we show over time. So let's bring that down into real life for a second. Here's what I'm curious about. What's one issue you care about that you felt frustrated about but haven't been sure what to do? And after walking through this, which tier feels most realistic for you to start with? You don't have to fix everything. Just start somewhere. I'll be reading. And if you're thinking, okay, but what do I actually do with that? Let's make it simple. This week, pick one issue you care about. Then take one step from tier 1. Call your representative. Say it in your own words. And then do it again a few days later. Because this is the shift. Change doesn't respond to one moment. It responds to patterns. That's not just a call. That's a signal. This channel isn't about censoring or forcing people to agree. It's about slowing down long enough to really listen, understand different perspectives, and approach discussions with thoughtful reflection together. I welcome different views, I really do, but respect matters here. If you disagree, explain why. If you see it differently, share your perspective. Here, our differences are strengths, and they're starting points for deeper understanding, not weapons. And if you'd like a little extra help shaping your reply, I've linked my 3 Ps in Action comment edition in the description. It's the same process I use myself to pause, pinpoint truth, and proceed with purposeful forethought. Don't worry about reading all this here. The full list of sources is in the description and on my site, american-together.com. I share them because checking sources matters just as much as checking headlines. The question isn't how loud we are once. It's what we're willing to repeat until it becomes impossible to ignore. Hit the thumbs up, share it with a friend, and join the conversation in the comments. Together, we're not just watching, we're building something. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Remember, pause, pinpoint truth, proceed with purposeful forethought. Join the conversation. See you next time.